I think most people have an expectation that they are going to be happy for a good part of their life. I think most people like to be happy for a good part of their life. And I don't think I'm any different.
I feel I do deserve to be happy. I think I've had a lot of heartache in my life, some of it my own fault and some of it not. I appreciate that we do make mistakes, but I think I need a break, and so does the family.
I want to be able to communicate with people just about ordinary things, do things in my life that I've stopped doing for 6 years. I want to be a part of the general public. I just want to be a part of somebody else again, part of everyday people. I'm not feeling shut away and isolated.
These people all want to be happy. None of them are clinically depressed, but they are all generally low in spirits. Is this their natural personality, or could they become more joyful? At the beginning of the year, they took up QED's challenge to see if they could change their misery into merriment. First stop, one of psychologist Robert Holden's laughter workshops in Oxford.
Wherever you like. In a way, I suppose I've made a study in my life of what I call sort of like ozone-friendly, non-chemical medicines that you can almost overdose on and feel happier. Okay, and those are things like laughter, happiness, relaxation.
Scientists have only recently started taking happiness seriously. Dawn, Keith and Caroline volunteered for QED's unique 2-month course, devised from the theories of the world's leading experts in this field.
So the first thing I'd like you to do, please, is for you to all stand up. And I'd like you to introduce yourself one by one to everybody in the room. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to share with them a bit of good news that you've had in the last week.
That's good news. But is she quite healthy herself?
Yeah, she's very healthy. She does
So
need help.
that's good news.
Last weekend, a friend of mine got married, and I've got this old mod too, Jerry.
To assess scientifically whether the course is working, the moods of the 3 volunteers will be closely monitored. Each of them at this stage reports on being well below par on the happiness scale.
We watched a movie alone last night without the children. Oh, that is good of you.
Oh, congratulations.
That's right, really, I'm running out of ideas.
Dawn Harrison works in Devon as a private detective. She has a loving husband and 3 healthy children. Yet when she started the course, her feel-good factor was right down at -20. Originally from Tyneside, she and her husband Nigel recently moved the family south in search of happiness.
I thought if I moved a long way, I'd be happier, because I would leave it all behind, but I didn't, and I just brought the whole lot with me, and I'm still the same person. I find that I tend to be very self-conscious about the way I look, and about whether I say the right thing, and whether people are laughing at me and thinking, oh, she's really silly, so I allow myself to become very miserable about things like that.
She asked me if she looks good, and I say, yes, you look great. And she said, well, you're obviously going to tell me that. And I say, no, honestly, you do. But it takes some convincing.
When people first meet me, they always think I'm really happy and easygoing, because I always try to make everyone laugh, and I always try to make other people happy. I don't quite know why. Maybe it's to hide the fact that I'm quite so miserable.
Take up a course in happiness. Take up a course to clear out your mind.
You go and take a seat and face each other.
You will show yourself how to smile.
B's, what I'd like you to do is to talk to A's, please, for 5 full minutes about everything you enjoy about being alive. 5 minutes. Good luck.
I enjoy getting out of the house. I enjoy going in a car and like going to see. So I enjoy. I'm running out of ideas. That wasn't even 45 seconds.
And basically, it's a book about 2 serial killers. It's called Dowry.
You enjoyed reading that?
The second volunteer is Keith Allen. Last year, Keith had a well-paid job in sales, a girlfriend he'd been with for over a year, and a Mark II Daimler. But he still wasn't happy. In search of something more, he now has only the Daimler.
Defining happiness for me would be the answer to why I've seemingly chucked in one of the best jobs I've ever had and split up with a girlfriend I was very happy with. So I really don't know why or what could achieve that happiness. I seemingly did have everything, or as I thought. But there's obviously a slight difference between contentment and happiness. And the happiness is probably a bit more than just going out and having a laugh. But where that line starts and ends and where the divide is between the two of them, I honestly don't know. Maybe I've got too many expectations and I should really just be happy with my lot, but I'm not, so I'll hope to be able to answer that question some later time.
Are you getting enough happiness? Are you getting enough of what makes you happy? Are you getting enough happiness?
So, would you take a moment to put one hand on the top of your chest and one down on your stomach? And let every breath be easy, effortless and natural. And just play with the idea that you could be happy for no reason at all. In the last 10 years, we have really started to look at, in particular, the relationship between laughter, happiness, and a sense of joy, and the impact that that has on the body. What we've found is that when people are happy, muscle tension relaxes in specific parts of the body. Also, when people are happy, their nervous system relaxes. The part of the nervous system that goes on like a bright neon light when we're stressed actually relaxes more when we're happy. Ladies and gentlemen, what you were doing there was called transcendental chuckling. It's a new form of meditation.
Caroline Ponting from Harrogate is the third volunteer. Her mother suffered a stroke that left her all but bedridden. Rather than put her into a nursing home, Caroline gave up her job and invited her mother to live with her. After 6 years as a full-time carer, the strain is beginning to show.
I do everything for her. I clothe her in the morning, I bathe her, I wash her hair, and give her 3 meals a day, roughly, put her to bed. She doesn't give me any sense of worth or, thank you very much, dear, you've been wonderful, you know, I'm so pleased that, you know, I'm living here with you. She makes me feel very... It's duty. She's been with me out of duties, not out of affection.
There we are.
That's an awful thing to say, I know.
There we are.
Thank you.
I'll just pop your tea there,
Yes, thanks ever so much.
just in case it falls off.
I don't feel love for her. I do obviously feel something for her. She's my mother.
I'll come and pick it up after.
But I don't feel affection towards her. I find it very difficult to give her a cuddle. I've never given her a cuddle. I can't do it. She's never, as children, we never had cuddles.
Before her mother came to live with her, Caroline worked meeting and greeting the customers at a local seafood restaurant.
My life was full of sparkle. It was like a glitter ball on the dance floor, twirling round. Lots of sparkle coming out of it, lots of go, and you thought, oh, I feel good. This is a place where this is where it all happens. And then when my mother came to live with me, that glitter ball that was up there became tarnished and more tarnished with no glitter coming out of it. It stood still. And that's how I feel that I am now. It's tarnished.
Let's just run these through. One of my fears about happiness, or one of my apprehensions about happiness is what?
Won't last, yeah.
It won't last. Yep.
It's too self-indulgent.
Yes, that's right, yep. Too self-indulgent. What we're doing here is too self-indulgent. Yep. Anything else?
It won't be enough.
It won't be enough.
Should I be so happy?
So, okay, if there's something that I really wanted you to remember from this day, it's ultimately this, that happiness is not something you have to deserve, earn, work for, or pay for. Not unless, of course, you want to. But I'm going to suggest that if you wanted to make a great breakthrough around happiness, it would be that you realise you can allow yourself to be happy at any given moment in your life without having to earn it.
I found it very interesting, but a bit confrontational. For my personal preference, I felt very exposed. And the lady I got partnered with, I felt very boring in comparison because I couldn't think of anything to say.
It's been difficult because it's very difficult to sort of put yourself in positions that you're not normally used to. So, but it's been very interesting. I've enjoyed it.
There's a lot of things that I have to confront and have to come to terms with before I'm going to get anything out of this. And it hasn't quite got to that, but I think it will. But I feel definitely benefit from it.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
It's in the United States that pioneering research is taking place. In EEG experiments at Madison University in Wisconsin, they are trying to find out which part of the brain responds to happiness.
All right, Ken, you're all set.
Okay, thanks. Ken. Yes. Okay, we're about to show you a series of slides, and they vary in emotional nature. Some of them are positive, others are negative. Let the emotions that are elicited by the slides just well up within you, and we're going to be recording physiology during this time. Here we go.
By measuring the electrical activity in the brains of thousands of people, quite literally their brain waves, Professor Richard Davidson has discovered that happiness lights up the left prefrontal lobe. By monitoring how active this area is in a resting state, Davidson can tell whether a person is naturally happy or unhappy.
We find that there are indeed people who walk around the world characteristically happy. Those people have more left prefrontal activation in a resting state. Doesn't need to be induced. A well-known psychologist talked about cerebral joy juice. This difference that we've identified among people is a biological correlate, if you will, or a biological substrate of cerebral joy juice.
These findings are confirmed by social psychologists in Britain.
There do seem to be happy personalities. They tend to be extroverts more than introverts, and they tend to think in special ways. They look on the bright side, what Americans call the Pollyanna effect. They're very optimistic. They assume things are going to be okay. They only remember good things about the past. If things go wrong, they don't blame themselves. They might blame somebody else. They wouldn't blame themselves, as unhappy people do.
Okay, Chris, I'd like you to lay down. Head in the head holder.
To reinforce the results of his EEG experiments, Professor Davidson carries out a brain scan. By monitoring blood flow, this shows more precisely which areas light up during happiness. His subjects are shown cheerful pictures and asked to think of happy events from their past to put them in a good mood. Then the scanner builds up a picture of the most active parts of their brain.
Here we see a focus in the left prefrontal region that is significantly more activated when a person is experiencing happiness that is produced by watching these pictures compared to watching pictures that have neutral content. So these findings complement our EEG findings and confirm them, but we now are able to say where within the frontal region these differences are present.
Caroline and the others have to fill out 2 questionnaires to measure their feel-good factor every week, the Oxford Happiness Inventory and the Auckland University Affectometer. The volunteers have to answer numerous questions about how they are feeling, which, when analysed, give an accurate picture of their state of mind. This is translated into a weekly score. Caroline was the most unhappy of the 3 at the start of the course, way down at -35 on this subjective scale. To get an objective measurement of her state of mind, QED took her to Professor Davidson's lab in
You
Madison.
can adjust it however.
Okay, that's
Are
fine.
you comfortable now?
That's fine, yes.
Caroline?
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready to begin now.
Caroline's brain activity is compared to that of all Davidson's subjects, from the happiest to the unhappiest.
Caroline's data is represented by this yellow line. And what you can see is that her brain function falls slightly to the right side of this curve, which is likely to be associated with a slightly negative emotional disposition. And it'll be very interesting to see how this pattern of brain activity is different following her training.
In Weston-super-Mare, Keith is 1 week into the QED happiness course. He's under strict instructions to exercise for at least 30 minutes every day.
Simply engaging in exercise puts people in a better mood. And there was one experiment where people went for a pathetic 10-minute brisk walk, and this had measurable effects on their well-being 2 hours later. So if we go for serious exercise, that will certainly improve our state of subjective well-being or happiness. And it also improves our mental health, and many doctors and psychiatrists are now prescribing exercise in cases of depression. And in some studies it's been found exercise was as successful as psychotherapy, which is bad news for psychologists, I suppose.
People who take exercise release endorphins, which are the body's natural painkiller. Similarly, people who are happy, particularly people who laugh a lot, they show a great capacity to be able to release endorphins too. Laughter has been described as stationary jogging or internal aerobics. It's a good form of exercise.
One expert goes as far as to claim that 100 laughs is equivalent to a 10-minute jog. Keith had to start every day with the aid of taped laughter and a good giggle. The American research shows that even a smile can shift the brain into a happier frame of mind, as long as it's the right kind of smile.
Smiling voluntarily may actually facilitate or increase the extent to which a person feels happy. And what we found is that when a person produced a social smile, which just has the cheeks pulling the lips up, that kind of smile did not produce very much change in the EEG whatsoever. The smile that involved both the cheek muscles and the eye muscles produced a pattern that was similar but not identical to the pattern that we see during spontaneous happiness. So if there is a form of smiling that we can produce voluntarily that will have beneficial effects, it's likely going to be the smile that involves both the cheek muscles as well as the eye muscles.
It's happy day. For you and me, for us and me, all the clouds have rolled away.
I'm going to move this cage over your head so that we can get a better picture of your brain.
In South Carolina, another team of researchers is tracing the flow of oxygen in the brain to discover whether different emotions activate different areas. They have confirmed that any emotion, good or bad, causes one particular area of the brain to burn oxygen.
We'll be talking to you through the microphones.
This is an image of the brain sliced right through the middle. The front of the brain is here, and the back of the brain is here. And in color is the area of the brain that's increased in activity in happiness, in sadness, in anger, and in anxiety. This is called the anterior cingulate in the limbic system.
But Dr. Mark George's work has shown that although all emotions cause activity in the anterior cingulate, it's of varying intensity.
That area of the brain has to be active for us to feel an emotion, no matter what it is. And that area is very active during sadness. In contrast, in happiness, that area is activated just a very small amount. And then very interestingly, we find decreased activity in large areas of what we call association cortex. So those are the parts of the brain that don't have a specific task. They're not in charge of moving or seeing. Their job is to integrate activity from all these other modalities and to think and plan and worry. So it's as if during happiness we have to shut off those areas of the brain that allow us to function but that sometimes can get in the way of happiness. excessive worrying or planning.
Dawn is in no doubt that worry is a major block to her happiness.
I usually find that I spend too much time worrying about whether I'm happy. I'm not a particularly easygoing person. I don't find it very easy to relax, and I do spend far too much time worrying about things that are not worth worrying about.
Like many others, Dawn's excessive worries stem from the very poor image she has of herself. Although she successfully juggles motherhood with her private detective work, she knows she won't be happy until she sheds the misconceptions that have dogged her life.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry to trouble you, sir. I wonder whether you might be William Wyatt. I was always brought up that if you were to be successful, you were single, and that you didn't get married and you didn't have children, that was looked upon as being a failure. And I think it's like programming a computer. When you're a child, if someone programs that into you, when you get to my age, you know that it's wrong, because I know that the children and my husband bring me happiness, and I am happy with that situation. But the programming says that that isn't the way it should be. If I want to be happy, I need to be successful.
Dawn, Keith and Caroline were made to change their negative attitudes towards happiness, the ones they'd had since childhood, such as "I don't deserve it" or "it won't last." To remind themselves of a more positive approach, such as "I like myself" or "happiness is good for me," they put small blue dots where they'd often see them. Each time a blue dot caught their eye, they remembered their new beliefs and stopped themselves from falling back into old damaging patterns of thinking.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy. In every life we have some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy now.
A month into the trial, Dawn's feel-good factor is really on the up.
I think I've altered the way I look at my life and I look at things. I've taken them less seriously, perhaps, which is what this has shown me, to take things less seriously and to take care of myself a little bit more, instead of spreading myself around too thinly and having no time left for myself.
I feel that I'm a long way ahead to what I was a month ago, and I feel that what has been happening to me through Robert, through the exercises, through everything I'm doing is helping me. It's putting it into practice. Having had 7 years of gradually going downhill, the slope is, I'm going up the hill again now with leaps and bounds. Oh, I feel much more positive about things. Oh, yes, goodness gracious, oh, yes. I feel much more light-hearted about things, yes.
Some of the regime is definitely a bit daunting, because it's making me think about things that I wouldn't necessarily want to think about, because I suppose it was something I'd never really thought about before. I'd never really sat down and thought, right, what are the reasons why I'm happy or unhappy? I suppose it's made me sort of sit back and give myself a chance to think about things, whereas before I just been in the habit of just doing things rather than actually thinking about them first.
British research has shown that all happy people share a clear idea of what they want out of life. They have well-defined goals. So for the next stage in the QED happiness course, the volunteers were asked to think about what they wanted to achieve in 5 years, then in 6 months, and then in 1 week. It's important not to be over-ambitious.
Sometimes, I think it's fair to say, people set goals which are so high that they don't succeed in those goals, and in a way that sort of confirms to them that they're no good anyway. You know, we can set goals in a way that actually sort of confirms our worst suspicions about ourselves, that we won't be able to achieve anything. So I'm a great believer in a day at a time. If you can get a day right, you're more likely to get a week right, and you're more likely to get a month right. You know, if you can get an hour right even, that's a great help.
I've been making little lists of some minor things like washing the dishes and just tiny little things, so that I felt like I'd done it. If at the end of the day, if all of 2/3 of it were done, I'd achieved something. Whereas before, I would maybe leave things and at the end of the day think, oh, no, I haven't done anything completely. But now I'm feeling like I've gained something by completing minor tasks.
I would like to set myself quite a few tasks for the next few years. I would like to think that I could perhaps be more sociable. I haven't been very sociable over the last few years. I've alienated myself through thinking that I was a boring old thing. I would like to become much more social again. I would like to be able to feel that I could open my heart and house to somebody, to involve them in my life here and make them as happy as perhaps I will feel myself.
What I'm going to do is to ask you to rate your mood on a 9-point rating scale. So the first rating would be on positive affect.
About a 4. 4 would be, yeah.
Somewhere close to the middle.
They're trying to find out whether there's a scientific connection between goal achievement and happiness at Cornell University in New York. By giving their subjects different cocktails of drugs, they've already identified 2 distinct types of goal-related happiness.
One, the incentive type of happiness that involves a great deal of motivation to go and achieve certain goals. Second, a gratifying type of happiness that we feel gratified and satisfied when we actually do accomplish the goals.
The first of these, incentive happiness, is the good feeling we get when we know we can attain a goal, when the end is in sight, if you like. It's linked to the brain chemical dopamine.
Incentive happiness relies on dopamine cells that project up to areas underneath the cortex, which is what you see here. And release of dopamine is known to create this very powerful sense of incentive, desire, elation, euphoria, enthusiasm, optimism, and a sense of power. And there are various drugs of abuse, like cocaine and amphetamine, which operate through the dopamine system that artificially create that sense of incentive and desire and euphoria.
It is now believed that dopamine, goals and happiness merge in the prefrontal cortex because this is where we create the image of our goals.
Dopamine is very important in the kinds of rewards that are associated with anticipated goals. And the reason that I say that is because the prefrontal cortex is a site that we know is critically important in the formation of goals. And the reason it is because when we think about what a goal is, it is the mental representation of a desired state which has not yet occurred. And so we hold that representation in our mind, and that representation then helps to guide our behavior toward the acquisition of that goal.
Despite the scientific evidence, Keith was still not taking goal setting seriously.
I haven't actually set too many goals just yet because I've been sort of just going along very nicely, you see, and I don't want to upset the apple cart because I've been quite enjoying just really doing not very much. So I haven't set myself too many daily tasks because if I do, then I feel I've got to get up at a certain time or whatever the daily tasks are. I mean, it would maybe put a bit of pressure. I understand the reasons for doing them, but I don't think at the moment I'm ready to put too many of them into sort of operation just yet.
Okay, Jim, how are you feeling?
I feel great. I feel really good, yes.
Well, let me ask you...
So could Keith take a shortcut to lasting happiness by increasing his dopamine with some of Richard Depu's drugs?
Between 8 and 9, yeah.
Just a pill that activates dopamine, for instance, is not going to give you a sense of happiness over time. It's setting goals, working towards those goals. It's all of these kinds of experiences that go into a sense of incentive happiness, for instance.
The second type of goal-related happiness comes at the end, when the goal is reached and can be ticked off the list. It's called gratification euphoria and is linked to a rush of endorphins, the same brain chemicals that give a high during exercise. By the end of each day, the volunteers are ripe for another vital ingredient of the happiness recipe, a good night's sleep.
A person who is a happier kind of person is more likely to sleep better, and a person who has better sleep, that better sleep is more likely to actually produce increased happiness. So it's a kind of feedback system that does go both ways.
Dawn's steady progress continued until halfway through the course. Then suddenly her feel-good factor plummeted dramatically. She sent the production team a fax.
Unfortunately, I don't feel that I can continue with this project. The last couple of weeks have been of some benefit, but this last week has been a nightmare. I know it's a huge pain, but I'm sure that you'll just be able to edit me out of things. I didn't intend to waste anyone's time, but I never expected it to be quite so exhausting. With sincerest apologies, Dawn. I felt like I was being cajoled into things that I didn't really think would make me particularly happy. And I don't know, maybe I was using that as an excuse, I don't know. Robert seemed to think I might be. He said that I was maybe frightened to take the last step. But he said he knew I couldn't go back to the way of life before. So I had to go on or disappoint myself by jacking it all in.
When did they wash? Washed it this afternoon, I think.
Things are very different for Caroline. Her feel-good factor is soaring, and she is working hard trying to stop feeling a martyr to her mother.
I've got to dismiss a lot of how she feels about things. I know she's my mother. I still have my life, and I'm going to have my life now. And so the way is forward, definitely. Most definitely forward. For me. Not for her. She's got me here in any case. So,
Put it there, Mother.
doesn't matter. She won't know. She'll just know that I'm not shouting at her so much. Throwing things at her. Swinging around by her hair.
In the last 2 weeks of the course, the volunteers were asked to take up a new leisure activity or hobby. There's a serious reason behind it.
To relax, to rewind, to release tension is terrific. To be able to meditate perhaps, to enjoy relaxation exercises, enjoy a walk in the park, go out to play even. All of these things I think can create a great balance in our life, without which I think happiness feels a long way off.
After considerable soul-searching, Dawn resumed her quest for happiness. She also took up her sketchpad again for the first time in 15 years.
Yes, the first dance we're going to do is the Linton.
The volunteers were now ready for their final fling, led by Professor Michael Argyle in what he believes is an infallible route to happiness.
I have recently found that dancing, rather amusingly, seems to give more joy than any other leisure activity that I've studied. For rather simple reasons, I think. It involves exercise, which itself is very source of positive emotion. It involves music, which can produce any emotion whatever. And it involves contact, cooperative contact with other people. So those three bundled together are quite an important package.
Oh, am I having fun? I am so... Whew.
It's fun. I didn't think it would be fun, but it is.
Well, it beats fishing, that's for sure.
Yes, I shall definitely be doing it again. Heaven help Harrogate.
At the end of the 8 weeks, they all reported spectacular success. Caroline has improved beyond all expectations, but the credibility of QED's course rests on whether her brain has been transformed into that of a naturally happy person. What would the EEG show?
Caroline, what we have here are the two depictions of your brain activity before the training, you had a pattern associated with mild negative emotion. After the training, when we assessed you, the pattern shifted dramatically. You can see the score here is at the limit of what we display on the page. This would be associated with a very extreme score.
In plain English,
is indicative
Caroline's
of
brain is now one of the
high positive
happiest
emotion.
Davidson has ever seen.
And so that would indicate that the happiness training changes not just your subjective feelings, but it literally changes how your brain functions.
Very much so. It's just amazing.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself,
That's because his trousers are too tight.
what a wonderful world.
I'm very pleased with Keith, Dawn and Caroline, but I'm really excited about their futures. I can see all of them taking steps into a more full life than ever before, a more creative life, more honest, more loving, and seizing the moment a little bit more. So I'm excited for them as well.
CAC,
Where's your nails today?
I came into it wanting to make a success of it because it was important. And I feel very, very happy how much of a success for myself and how I feel about things. I'm very happy, yeah.
Hi.
It's certainly been a bit of an eye-opener, I suppose. It's calmed me down probably a little bit more. Probably taught me a lot more tolerance. You know, you've got to share both the good times and the bad times and not just think of yourself all the time, which is probably what I've done in 9 out of 10 relationships over the years. So I think that really is the biggest relief out of that. I think it's a major one for me, for sure.
You're going to change your job, are you?
I seem to be a little bit more at peace with myself since we started this. And I've drawn the conclusion that I've always expected other people to change my life and never taken control of it myself. And this year I have. And I'm sure that I've gained some confidence.
What a wonderful world.
These are enormous changes I never expected to happen. When I started the program in January, I thought it was just going to be a huge hoot, and it became hugely serious, and I wasn't expecting that at all.
What a wonderful world.
As I said before, I thought it was just going to be a laugh, and it became a life changer, which is really weird.
What a wonderful